Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for another exciting AdvisorShares AlphaNooner. Today, we are very excited to be joined again by Todd Harrison, founder and CIO of CB1 Capital Management, here to spend a little bit of time talking through the end of 2025 and the current cannabis investing landscape. We are in the final month of the year, so a lot of interesting things to pack in when it comes to investing, but especially in the world of cannabis. So we're going to spend some time kind of working through the current stories and what might be ahead for the rest of the year. If you're out there, one, thanks for joining. We always really appreciate it. But two, if you're joining and you have questions, comments you want to put in there, I've already seen before the show started some comments, which is great to see. But you're always welcome to put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them as we go along. I know, the cannabis conversation is one that is very, very active. A lot of people have some interesting questions as this is kind of developing. So feel free to put those in the chat and take advantage of the time with Todd. So with all that said, Todd, thanks for joining us. I know we were chatting a little bit in the pre-show. I didn't get to ask about your Thanksgiving, though. How did it all go? Did you cousin walk it? I don't know if it counts cousin walking if you don't have a cousin to walk with, but how was it?
Yeah, there is no cousin. We don't walk here. We step outside. We have an outdoor patio, which we enjoyed for football and flower. So it's, listen, one of the things about, having kids is educating them, having two 21-year-olds now who grew up, and I was telling them how this is going to be legal one day, and, sort of half right, we're in New York, but educating them not only on, the medicinal benefits as you get older, but also on the importance of getting it from someplace you trust. And so I end up being their personal shopper of sorts, and it works out for them. It works out for me. And our youngest, who says, "Daddy, you smell like cannabis." I say, "Well, thank you, honey." She's like, "Well, it's not a compliment." But she knows we don't drink. Her mother and I both haven't had a drink in years. So Thanksgiving was great. I'm sorry, I sort of went on a ramble there. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. No, but I think what you're talking about kind of speaks to the normalization of it all. I think, 10 years ago, I think that would not be a world that we're living in where I think you are providing that safe, access.
I was living
okay.
but maybe not as comfortably, we'll say.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
I think things have changed. And broadly, I know we were talking earlier with some other guests on about sort of the coverage that we've seen in, in media in terms of the cousin walk and sort of Thanksgiving, all that stuff. So I think that's become more and more popular for the broad public. But you're right. I think for people who have been in the world of cannabis for a long time, it's not new, but the world is kind of catching up to where we are. So no, it was good.
In some ways more than others. But yeah.
What are you gonna do?
So, and hopefully that'll change soon. Let's talk about that.
Yes, we will. I will say also the one thing that was a little bit heartbreaking is for Thanksgiving, I was in Pennsylvania, which to me was a little tough. I know we'll talk about some good stories we've seen on the state level in cannabis lately, but I'm still hoping and pushing for Pennsylvania to finally make some moves. We'll see. But yeah, some good stories out there in general. So a lot to work through, I think, today, but did want to spend some time kind of starting on the state story side of things. I know some great news from Virginia, of course, but kind of getting moved along, a little more details as we're going. And then, of course, some interesting stories coming out of Texas. So maybe starting on the Virginia side, what can you tell us about where we are there?
Largely lost in the shuffle, with everything that's going on and all eyes on DC, two pretty important states. Virginia, obviously, been legal for some time, and now finally going to have a retail framework that's going to benefit certain operators more than others. We talked about Green Thumb, Jushi, Verano, and now Cura, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So that happened, or is happening, or will happen, I guess, once the 30-day shopping period ends.
I will say probably just because there are probably people who are joining who might not be following it as well, just for clarification, purely buying those licenses from the cannabis. Just again, there are people who are new. I just want to make sure everyone's in the loop. Yes.
Which is why you're so good at what you do. But anyway, Virginia, obviously massive state, and then you have Texas, and I think again in Verano and Trulieve, obviously the winners there, and at least initially, that's just getting going. That's as a state, but I think it's Texas in particular. I think speaks to the storyline that we've talked about in that the hemp loophole will be viewed through the lens of history as the ungating factor for U.S. cannabis, right? You can't put a 7-year-old puppy back in, puppy dog back in the shelter.
Sure.
So I think that's all going to manifest over time. And I think low key, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago when I was on, right? I was on, we talked about this pre-show. It was the 19th. It was actually the low print for the ETF of this cycle. And it was a conversation about, when you're sitting here and you see something that you think is probably the most important news, most important positive for the sector in some time. But ABC and others are reporting it as THC is being banned, and in a very thin and liquid market where people are already preconditioned for disappointment, it doesn't take much to really get things, going to the downside. I think the ETF's up about 25% in the last 2 weeks, despite the recent, nail biting. But it remains, the space remains a bit of a binary, in binary position in front of this rescheduling catalyst that we're all waiting on. And we could talk about that if you want. But there are generally three reasons why people are avoiding the space. One of them is, top line growth, and you could argue, I would argue that over the last 5 years has been huge growth in THC and cannabinoids. It's just been bifurcated in two channels, but the thesis itself of cannabis exploding as a societal tool and a wellness product and category, that very much remains, bang on balls accurate, right? It is, I think, it was once said. The second bucket is, a regulatory framework, an even playing field, I think, as George Arcos called it, from MJ Biz. And, we're waiting on that with rescheduling. I still think it's in the near term. Everything we're hearing and the story arc that we talked about, where you tough on crime, the cartels and the crime rings, and the illicit grows, the vape gate, and close the hemp loophole, now in a position to study it and give the states the rights, all of which the president has signaled. So we feel like that still remains on track, and there's no reason. I mean, it is subject to change, like it could change, but we haven't heard anything that would make us think it's changed. So still optimistic there, in the minority, although I will note poly-market odds have surged from 5% to 10% overnight. And then that third bucket is uncertain tax provisions. And for what it's worth, have on pretty good authority that there are some deep discussions going on with the IRS, and one of the potential solutions would be vacating medical back taxes for 280E. I don't know if it happens. I don't know, but I know the discussions are happening. But something like that, clarity on that front would be obviously an unexpected and huge positive. So those are the three areas we're looking at. And, as we sit here on December 3rd, 2025, we're still optimistic that the president's going to do what the president said he was going to do. And to that end, as we were getting on, I saw a poll from YouGov that Trump's approval rating among 18 to 29-year-old voters has fallen dramatically, with a 48-point swing from +9 in February to -39 in December. I feel like he's lost the crypto crowd a little bit in that, right? And, how else, do you sort of capture the imagination of the youth other than crypto? I feel like that also aligns ahead of the midterms. So, we talked about what we heard in DC. A lot of the industry, CEOs have talked about promises made and taking President at his word and assurances. I think Jim Hagedorn talked about it publicly over the summer, that multiple assurances. So it's not like, the clues aren't there. I just don't think anybody believes it. And I think you look at the GOP banning the hemp loophole, and a lot of people saying, well, this is what you would expect, whether it's THC, hemp, or whatever it is, it's prohibitionist. And we don't think that that's what it is. And I think at a certain point, you got to say, okay, this is going to inflect one way or another. And I think we're at that inflection right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I think on the hemp side of things, I think you're right. There's a way to view it as it's painting THC with a broad brush and saying it is prohibitionist. But I think with a more careful eye, you can see it's more sort of another thing that's being kind of tweaked and fixed on, hopefully, the path towards a better, regulatory structure. Which, again, like you mentioned, I think that there are steps along the way. It is funny you mentioned, being in DC, because I No, I saw you there. I, for some reason, mentally thought I saw you on a nooner, but yeah, you haven't been on a nooner in a long time, relatively recently. But we haven't even talked about DC. You did a great panel with Kim that was really interesting. I think I saw the whole live feed that's up and available. I think it was on Twitter or X, whatever. So it's great to be able to see that full thing. But any highlights that you pull from that? I think great to see that participation, those people being out there and active in DC, trying to really make their position heard, kind of give some clarity into a space that is demanding clarity. Any thoughts kind of from there?
Well, I think, as we just discussed, the conversations with a lot of the CEOs were all variations of the same thesis, which was, we take the president at his word, and we think he's going, the assurances have been made. I'm not privy to those conversations, but having enough conversations with people who are privy to those conversations, along with other hints such as the ECS video and other conversations, there's a mosaic, right? Like, this isn't, this is pure speculation. And by the way, everything that we've talked about and everything that we are talking about is as I believe it to be true, but that doesn't mean that it can't change or won't change. And that's sort of the world we live in, not just cannabis, but that's the world at large.
Yeah, sure.
But I do think there's enough to go on here where you look at it and you say, he's losing the youth vote, he's lost the crypto crowd. He knows the cannabis industry needs this by year end, and he wants their support, I would think, into the midterm, I would think. Whether that manifests with a Christmas miracle or not remains to be seen. But the good news, I guess, is that there's not many people left who think that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And going into the midterms in the first or second quarter, this is just comes down to a function of timing. But there's nothing, there's no reason that we have heard or seen or
Sure.
that would say that this is, the storyline doesn't end with rescheduling and a move towards states' rights.
Yep, that makes sense. I think, again, that's good to hear that the sort of behind the scenes conversations match up, I think, with what we heard on those panels. And I think what some of the, leaders have been communicating in terms of what they're seeing. I imagine, though, even while they feel that it's, top of mind for the administration, they are making their case. I'm hoping they're not letting their foot off the gas in terms of being there, getting in front of them, staying on top of it, keeping the importance of getting it through. Because I think you're right. There are benefits of getting it done this year. If it doesn't happen this year, there's still a push to get it done. But I think being able to try to make the case for it with the urgency is important. So I hope that is still getting done, that work getting done. Are you able to, were there any other meetings that were following while they were in DC? Just because I feel like that's or can you not say? Which is fine.
I mean, listen, what I know, which is, that the industry is cautiously optimistic and dependent on, assurances that have evidently been made. And I, for one, think that Trump's going to deliver. I think for a number of reasons, but which we talked about, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that doesn't mean that, when it does, it's going to have the results that we expect. But I think a lot of that will have to do with what language is accompanying it, right? What the Bondi memo, what that says, and does that have any language around safe harbor, as some conversations have, indicated it might. I don't know. But if it is, that's the kind of thing that can get, people excited. So we'll see. It's very thin. There's really not a lot of volume in our space these days. I don't think there's much belief. I know there's a lot of venom. We were talking before the show that I went on my end of year pardon parade before my year-end sabbatical. And I didn't know that X doesn't allow, they don't no longer allow you, at least I can't see who I've blocked. So I had to go through memory and then see just kind of go on a little bit of an exploration. And then I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot of venom out there. But, listen, let's see where this goes. I do think that, the or a takeaway is everything we've been talking about in terms of adoption for the last 5 years is proved true, right? The curveball of the hemp loophole, that is stunted the growth. I would say it's been a detour of sorts, but I also think it's been a blessing in disguise, because the whole country, especially the red states now, understand, what this product is. And as long as they can get it from a safe and regulated place, they should have the ability to access it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you brought up the kind of the losing the youth vote a little bit from the Trump's perspective, but I do think the bigger one is also sort of the older person vote. I think if a lot of people have been using uh, cannabis related products, I think to kind of help deal with their medical issues, sleep, anything in a range of scale of things, especially if that hemp loophole closes and there's no other way for them to get access to the products that are helping them. I think
Yep.
that's going to be a problem. So I think even from just not a defensive perspective, but basically that would be a big pain point, I think, for him. So one, two,
and there's also, like, let's just touch on the fact that the Supreme Court's going to make a decision in 10, 12 days time, on the 15th. I don't know if we'll hear on the 15th, but I guess they're meeting on the 12th, and we'll have a determination on the 15th on whether they're going to hear the David Boies case, which we've been following for a number of years. And you've had some pretty influential and conservative think tanks, whether it's the Cato Institute or whether it's the AFP and the Koch Foundation, and a few others. So it comes down to, will this court want to hear that? And we've heard from Clarence Thomas, among others, that there is an interest in the past. So we'll see. Like, I don't know if there's a read through that we're hearing so soon. Like, so I did talk to one constitutional lawyer who thought it could be a potential positive that they were hearing it so soon. But I don't know what's confirmation bias or hearing what we want to hear at this point. But that's another that's another that's another branch of the government that the idea was to hit all shots on goal here. And from what we're hearing, again, not to get inside baseball, but if and when we do get rescheduling, I do think that's going to change the tenor of a lot of the legislative conversations. It'll change the tenor in Pennsylvania. It'll change the tenor, I think, to a lot of states. So we're staying the course for what it's worth, and for better or for worse. But all you have is your name and your word, and as of right now, that's what we're hearing and that's what we're seeing.
Yep, that's fair. But I do think it's a little bit different than it's been in the past, towards maybe the beginning of the year a little bit, where more things are kind of converging in terms of not signs and signals, but things kind of teeing up, even if it's a Boies case and kind of another iron in the fire on that side of things. I think a lot of things are teeing up in December, which is interesting, not from a timing perspective in terms of saying things are going to get done in December, but I think just a lot of interesting.
And I thought, a shout out to ATB, who I thought put out a very thoughtful note this morning with their 2026 look ahead. And they had they listed their pecking order in a few names. We could talk through that if you want.
Sure.
Well, I thought it was, listen, even with rather than paraphrase, they think it would be a better year than this year. What is it? About 5 times EBITDA for the tier 1s right now. They see catalyst rescheduling adult use in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Florida, which, by the way, I also agree the hemp ban is going to help drive people to the polls in Florida next year. I think that's an under-discussed byproduct of the hemp ban is the potential for Florida to flip next year. They point to the intoxicating hemp ban as the most underappreciated catalyst. I think we just talked about that, so a little confirmation bias there. And naming names in terms of tier 1 pecking orders, they upgraded Curaleaf and Cresco to outperform. Green Thumb, they're assigning 0 value to Rhythm, but also assumes they exercise their option to buy back their brands. Their pecking order for tier 1s is Green Thumb, Trulieve, Verano, noting that Verano is the most attractive valuation amongst the tier 1s, highest upside amongst their coverage, and too much negativity priced in. And among tier 2s, which, again, confirmation bias, we like these names too, TerraSend, Ascend, Jushi, and Glasshouse, for different reasons. But, we think those names probably have more torque on the headline against potentially the safety of some of the tier 1s, the risk reward thing playing out. But I thought it was a pretty thoughtful note, and they're constructive without, base case without federal reform. And then you layer in those catalysts in you have a upside from there. So I thought it was fair. I do agree that the hemp loophole is going to be a positive. It's going to take some time. But it's going, if we can couple that now with the river card of rescheduling in the near future, we'll say, then I think you're going to have an opportunity to, capture the cannabis crowd into the midterms. So
Yep. I think
that's the play, and I feel like we've been here before into year end, waiting on the government. But I do feel like this is a bit of a different complexion because it's one man has the sole discretion to make this happen. He wouldn't have had that ability without the previous president, but the previous president couldn't or wouldn't get it done. And Trump has the ability to do so and take that credit and steal the issue.
That's fair. I was going to say, I feel like last time we were talking, it was a lot of sort of talking about how the government was closed, and that necessarily wasn't a hurdle for something to get done. What's the difference in terms of having the government open now? Any slightly more positive, anything there at all?
I mean, other than the hemp loophole being closed, and it needed to be, legally redefined at the federal level for there to avoid a legal snafu of rescheduling, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was told. I'm not a lawyer, but it makes sense, right? It sort of makes sense. So, the people who remain optimistic, nothing has changed, and because trust me, I ask them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that anything's going to happen, and that doesn't mean that we get what we want. But I do think I happen to think that it's going to happen. The president's going to come through, and the industry is going to live to fight another day, and the good names are going to emerge. We're going to see a lot of consolidation. We didn't really talk about that. I believe there's a lot of conversations that are happening. I think that there's going to be winners that emerge from this, and we're going to look back at the last 5 years and say, it was an expensive lesson, but the thesis, certainly proved true in terms of cannabinoid wellness and in terms of the appetite of Americans for cannabis at large as a alternative to alcohol or otherwise.
Yep, no, 1,000%. That Fox piece that was out recently about how Americans maybe are using less alcohol in favor of cannabis, I think proves that across the political spectrum. Again, I think it's an apolitical thing. I think Americans want cannabis when they need it. And again, that safe, regulated element, important. All right, looking at some questions and comments as we're going along. Interesting thought from Sonic Yogi, wondering if the timeline will be further out for maximum political drama. I'm not sure how much you'd weigh. I feel like if you dropped something all at once, I feel like that would have a big splash versus... I don't think I guess it's hard to.
What was the question? Because I can't see the question.
Sorry. Sonic Yogi was saying basically, will he do sort of kind of what Biden did to kind of milk, to push it out to get the most?
I mean, it's possible, but I do know that the pressure to get it done before the year end is coming from the industry side. And insofar that if you want the industry support, I would think that is something you would want to give the industry. That's really the only, conceivable catalyst for him doing anything this year. You look at the betting odds and they're all saying, okay, next year is, a coin toss this year is a, 1 in 10 shot. It was 1 in 20 yesterday, but 1 in 10 today. We'll see, it's really just the reason I think that it could happen sooner rather than later is because of those conversations that is everything okay?
Yeah, it's all good. I think there was a minor freezing, but I think the stream's good.
It's a conversation, there it seems to be an alignment that, assurances have been made. So I'm not privy to those conversations, but that would seem to imply that, there were conversations around the issue.
Fair enough.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I don't think that the silence means that it's fallen off the radar of people who are trying to make it happen.
Yep. I think that's well said. All right. Interesting question from Barefoot Man. Interesting username. Love it. Wow. How would the IRS determine the percent of medical sales? Interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I would think that in certain states like Florida, you don't really have to do the math, right? Again, this was a conversation that we've confirmed is happening, but we don't know what the results are going to be. We could speculate as to who it is, but I'm not going to. But that's, for those of us who are old enough to remember what the great financial crisis looked like. There's a FASB rule that changed the mark-to-market accounting that, unless you were really paying attention, you didn't know what it meant. If we see a UTP settlement in our space, which nobody's expecting, I feel like that will have a similar type of impact. And that'll take one of the three major concerns we talked about, kind of check the box and offer clarity there. So again, it's growth, it's regulatory, even playing field, and the tax, conundrum. Those are the three buckets that need to be addressed.
Yep, I think that is true. Also, Sonic Yogi is saying, thanks, appreciate your writings and takes. So a good reminder that you've got a Substack where you're putting out some interesting kind of views on what's going on in the cannabis industry.
Some people like it. Some people don't.
That's okay. Everything's subjective, I guess, whatever. Noah's mentioning, which is great. When I purchased in Maryland, I have to select adult or medical. So maybe they're tracking through what you self-select as. That's a
yeah. I think that's really it, because medical typically has it's completely, I know in New York is completely different processes as well. So that would be the answer, but that would also make sense. It also would seem to be a reasonable solution. But reasonable solutions in the government aren't really go hand in hand. But I do think that I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, I think that's normally true, but I do think this new administration keeps saying new. It's a year at least, but the current administration, I think, is approaching things differently in terms of the red tape element of things, though, right? So I would imagine if you're looking for more of that common sense or kind of an easy change, even though it's a big change.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we did see, we have to acknowledge that we did see a pretty good downtick in terms of support for cannabis among the GOP. I asked about that. I was told that that's not, problematic. That was like one poll, and there are other polls that, that the president prefers, that he's using that shows a de minimis sort of impact. But I do think that is the impact of gas station weed and the popular perception, much like it was in New York. For most people, they thought once you legalize weed, that was the experience, that you go buy these products in your corner store, and that's what it is. And very few people even stopped to question it. They just figured that's what an adult use market looks like, right? So you have to clean that up before you can have the real thing. And I think that's what the Trump administration has been doing. I think they've been cleaning up that market. I talked to Derek Maltz a lot. I mean, it needed to be cleaned up. They're poisoning our kids with this shit, and they've done that. I'm not, listen, have your political views all you want, but it's very hard for a legal regulated market to exist when you have, it undercut by a very coordinated cartel and crime ring syndicate that is operating under the cover of legal hemp when it's anything but. We didn't really talk about where that's going to go, because I think that was another conversation in DC. I think there's a place for hemp beverage, for low dose THC beverages. I have no problem, and from conversations I've had with operators and MSO CEOs, they have no problem if that stays in the channel. I don't think flower and vapes are ever going back to that channel from a regulated standpoint. I think if you do get some legislation, which I got very different feedback on, but if you do get legislation that'll either cap it at 5 or 10 milligrams from hemp-derived sources, I think the battle will be over the gummy channel, right? And if that's the case, and you have a gummy channel that everyone could participate in, so be it. But that would seem to be sort of the dilution effect if they do get a low dose hemp legislation passed. I would feel like that's probably got a good chance. That was my initial take, was that you would see some sort of carve out for beverages. But some of the people in DC I spoke with were like, they were, like, lawmakers were very happy to get this subject off their plate. They don't want to, it was an unintended, consequence, and they have zero interest in revisiting it. I don't know who to believe. I love hemp beverages. It's saved me from alcohol, and my wife and I, it's all that we drink is the tempters. And I think there will be a solution. I think there will be that channel. It's just what remains to be seen is what the supply chain will be, right? But I don't think it's going to go away. I'm talking about beverages in particular. I can't speak to the potential for hemp legislation, but I do know McConnell, isn't going anywhere until 27, and the ban goes into effect before assuming he lives, it goes into effect before he leaves, so I don't know is the answer there. But I do think that as ATB, as Freddie said in his morning note today, it is the most underappreciated positive for the regulated market, and the fact that there's only 7 of us around to look at it and make that determination, I think speaks to where we are as an industry and how long this bear market is and how much it's taken out of us as a sector.
Yes, I think that is well said. Yeah, we'll have to see where we end up on. There's still, I think, some unknowns on the hemp side of things. I do think you're right that from when it has been around, I think it has been helpful for the good actors to give exposure to people who might not have been used to cannabis or have easy access to it. I think it's really grown that demand for THC products. Do think you're right that if you obviously have a broad, less regulated channel, you will have bad actors in that element that kind of paint it bad, I guess, for the entire segment, which is tough. But hopefully, I think if we do see some, better regulation, that can adapt in some of the good actors, I think, ultimately as well.
Let's also, let's be honest, there was no such thing as intoxicating hemp 7 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it was a little bit of a bait and switch. And we talked about, this last week as a puppy dog sale. That puppy is 7 years old now. Like, you try to take my 7-year-old dog, I'll, good luck with that. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's how people, you see it. That's the uproar now. But I think they're just using the wrong vernacular. Like this, it's not hemp. You know what I'm saying? Like that, at least traditionally, that's what you're talking about is cannabis. You just don't know it yet. Yep. Right. But cannabinoids are cannabinoids, and hemp is traditionally industrial, and if it's going to impact you physiologically, then it's cannabis, right? And so I think that's where the government got back to when it reopened. We were told again 3 things need to happen: reopen the government, close the loophole, and reschedule cannabis. And at the time, I said, well, I don't believe that that the loophole is going to close. This was back in September, October, or I guess October, because you said reopen the government. Mm-hmm. And here we are. So, we'll see. But I feel like you needed to address that before you could move on to this. And now that we have, that opens the window. When Trump decides to climb through that window is anybody's guess. And that's just what it is. It's a guess, because he is, the only one that knows when he's going to do it. If he's going to do it, I should say, and when, if and when he does it.
I think that's fair. I will say, I think for the hemp loophole, I think the thing that was most interesting to me about it, in some ways, aside from obviously what the knock-on effects are going to be, is just a reminder how quickly things can change. I think, the hemp loophole has been talked about for a long time in terms of getting it addressed, and then sort of out of the blue, bam, got addressed, which is kind of crazy. So I think it's a good reminder to me just how quickly things can change, and hopefully for the better long term. So we'll see. All right, so some final questions, which is in here, which one from Long True Leave talking about Texas, which is great. But JT in LA is asking, anybody know who the Texas, compassionate use project regions work? Are they landlocked based on what they are received? Can True Leave move outside of Region 1 and Verano 10? Do they get stuck in their own specific sections, basically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but can certainly find out, JT.
Okay.
For the end of the day.
That sounds good. All right. Will you post it on Twitter? Where's it going to go? Where?
I don't know. I was just going to send it to JT, but
okay.
Yeah. But I think this is the last. This is our last, right, of 2025.
It is very sad. You're going on your break for a bit, which will be interesting. Skip is saying carve outs for big established conglomerates leave a bad taste in many mouths of smaller operators, maybe even a bitter taste. So I think that's a conversation that's been had in the cannabis space for a while now. Sort of.
We're talking about smaller operators in cannabis, or about hemp operators?
I imagine because it's not, they're kind of both, but I'm imagining it's cannabis operators. I would imagine. See if you have thoughts.
Yeah, no, but it's also, I think it's also a function of these smaller operators, and this is what we were trying to tell Cory Booker 5 years ago. Like, without banking, these guys are, they're the first to go. So, I don't know. I agree. that there's a David and Goliath mentality, but I don't think that the Goliath is Verano. I think the Goliath is Anheuser-Busch,
Yes.
right? For what it's
Yep.
worth.
Yep. No, I think that's true.
Well,
I think
that's just me knowing George and Aaron, and watching them, grind every day. And like, I don't view them as big corporate. I view them as entrepreneurs and pioneers that have done everything right. And despite the fuckery, despite all odds, are still fighting. Right. I think there's value. And I think, you learn how to operate lean and mean. When the cuffs come off, these guys are going to make noise, and they're going to do a lot of M&A, and they're going to find accretive deals. And there's going to be another side to the cycle. Right. But we need a kiss from the gods, with a nod to Tim Cup. Right. We need a kiss from the gods. You don't know what that is. Tin Cup is a Kevin Costner movie.
I'll add it to the list for the holidays.
Yeah, but you kids.
Yeah.
But let's just, happy and healthy holidays to you and the entire team. Despite what I know has been a grueling journey, I still think you guys are doing a tremendous job of transparency and navigating what's been, in my 35-year career, an unprecedented journey in so many different ways. So kudos to you and your team, and for healthy and happy holidays, and to your viewers, our viewers, your viewers, for the good ones, healthy and happy.
Yep. For everyone out there watching, really, really appreciate it. Hope you have a happy holiday as well. Todd, thanks for all the work that you do as well. I think it's important to be continuing to push this industry forward. There are people out there who need it medically, or just want it, again, as a way to have fun in a safe way that they understand. And again, keeping it out of the hands of kids, all those important things. So I think, everyone's going to keep scrapping, keep pushing ahead. I do think that we get there eventually, because again, I think it is something that most people agree on, most people want. So again, I hope we get there, but appreciate all the hard work as well, of course. Everyone, thanks for joining. Thanks for some great questions. Really appreciate it as well. And we'll catch you tomorrow. Happy holidays. Thanks.
Thank you.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.